Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. Hello, and with us today is Miley Waterman. She is a business owner, an event producer, and the current CEO of Brave Global, a nonprofit that empowers vulnerable youth in order to stop exploitation. She is a wife, a mother, and she is passionate about amplifying women's voices and talents. Miley lives in Phoenix, Arizona with her husband, son, and 2 dogs. Miley, welcome to the show.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me.
So great. There's so much happening in the world, and, I love when people have passion projects. I'd love for you to tell us more about Brave Global.
Yeah, so Brave Global is a nonprofit, and we began as a grassroots effort where I used to live in Long Beach, California, and we went global about 3 years ago, serving vulnerable youth all over the globe. And so what we do is resource their caregivers, social workers, foster parents, youth leaders, et cetera, to just reach the most vulnerable youth in their community with a message of empowerment and hope. And our hope is to eradicate exploitation and sex trafficking. The thing is that these youth that are the most vulnerable are usually from the foster care system. So that is why that community is our main target.
Oh, so good. It's interesting because, a lot of times we're starting to hear more, and this is, giving voice to this. I've spoke with a lot of survivors here on the show. And, we're talking about being at choice and living a life of freedom, being able to have organizations like you have to be able to help people to be seen. And I think your website's beautiful. I've looked at it, and I'd love for you to talk about, there's a different aspects about saying like, we see you, we believe in you, and we are with you. Can you talk a little bit about the distinction of that and how important that is to help these children, get on in their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know that vulnerable youth, or as some people like to call them, at-risk youth, they're running at a huge deficit in terms of self-esteem and valuing themselves and just understanding that they're unique and that they have a purpose and a life that's worth living. I mean, oftentimes, like I said, most oftentimes they're from the foster care system. They're involved in juvenile justice. They are on probation, possibly. They're from broken homes. They might be motherless or fatherless or both. And the message of empowerment that we try to get to them with is, like you'll see on our website, the pillars. We see you, you matter, you're valuable, we're with you, and you belong. So those things we try to repeat time after time through our content and through our curriculum, because we want them to know that we see them, they matter, and that we're with them no matter what.
One of the things, it's interesting that, a lot of times, especially you talk about the foster care, a lot of these kids have been in and out of a lot of circumstances. And, a lot of times there's a lack of trust. And even in authority, I'm a retired police officer, and I know that a lot of the kids in the system, they've had bad experiences with police. They've had judges, there's been things where they don't have as much of trust in society and people to look up to. What are some of the things that you're able to do that is allowing them to rebuild that trust?
Yeah, I think that putting them in contact with people that will continue to repeat to them that their past doesn't define them, maybe things that they've done or things that were done to them that are making them feel like they're not of value or not worthy. We don't want those messages for them. We want the exact opposite. We want them to come into contact with people that are willing to invest in them, to let them know that their past does not define them. And so, you'll see on our website and on our Instagram and Facebook, wherever you can find us, that we put out a lot of survivor-led content. So it's tools, things that can be taught, interactive journals, web series, etc., that have messages straight from survivors, people that have been involved in the life that's like the type of life that maybe these kids are coming from right now. We want the people that are teaching these kids to really be a reflection of who they are and maybe what they've been through, but we want them to see that there are adults who have come out of that and that are now living a life of purpose. So we really try to have our content be survivor-led, and just to repeat those messages that your past doesn't define you, and that there are adults out there that have been through things that want to help you.
Right. I think it's so important to have those kind of role models to see, like, when they see someone who's been successful, that they have moved through and that they hear their exact words, right? That it's not hearing from somebody who's speculating. It's somebody who's actually walked the walk and have had that experience. And I think labeling and language is also like really important. And, whether you call yourself a victim, right? Because we can say we've all had experiences where we've had victim experiences, but whether we label ourselves as that makes the whole difference. And I love how you talk about, you are not your past, right? You can actually look at any of the experiences that people have, and that is actually can turn around and become your strength. Like, you now have some experience that other people can't have, that may be part of how you're going to impact in the world, or how you're going to relate to someone, or some things can happen. So all the different things that can happen in your life, you can really shift that around by just, the messages that we give to ourselves and what those things actually look like. So Miley, I'd love for you to talk about, how Brave Global is part of your mission to elevate women's voices and to put them in leadership roles.
Yeah, I think that my passion for amplifying women's voices comes from how much that I've come into contact with in terms of the vulnerable youth population and the female vulnerable youth population. We came to know about a statistic when we launched Brave that was true for LA County at the time several years ago, and now is true for most major markets in the U.S. and beyond. And that is that out of all the girls between the ages of 12 to 18 that are being rescued from human trafficking, 70 to 80% of them are from the foster care system. So for that purpose, I mean, that statistic is staggering, right? So for that purpose, we are really focused on the girls, getting to the girls and really helping them to grow into this next phase of their life after the teenage years, understanding that not only do they have a voice, but we want to make sure they understand how to use it. So we have a Brave Leadership Academy, and we have a Brave Scholars Program. We have all of these sort of next level programs that allow young women to find their voice, to tell their story if that's what they want to do. Many of these girls have a story that they're ready to tell because they want to use it to help someone else, or maybe they want to show the signs of danger for somebody who might be going through something, and they want them to know and raise awareness for what could be next and what it looks like to go toward a dangerous path. So we believe those are all really important tools and resources to know going into your next phase of life as a young woman. And when we talk about amplifying young women's voices, there are many girls who come to us and say, I have a story to tell. I'm ready to tell it to help other people, but I just don't know how to do that yet. And so Brave tries to give them the resources and connections to get in front of, a local audience maybe, or maybe it's a podcast or a web series, or maybe they want to start writing. We give them a lot of different opportunities and connections to people that can help them start to tell their story in the way that's comfortable for them.
It's so great. As the world is awakening more to these atrocities, and, I think that, a lot of people don't want to believe that these things are happening, or that the rate that they're happening, especially in organizations, because we're seeing a lot more, covers being blown of places that were supposed to be, like you said, foster care, a place of haven, even charitable organizations, that they're saying now that when people go to other countries as part of maybe even a church church group, right? That there are so many exploitation type things that happen under the umbrella of you're supposed to be safe in this environment. So for girls to be able to actually have this place of safety in places where they're told this is supposed to be the safe place for you to be, there can be a really big disconnect in that. And so seeing some of these girls who are now women who can band together with their shared experiences, are some of them connecting beyond their circumstances, where they kind of almost building their own families? Like who is it that they can trust at this point?
Yeah, I know. I think that there is, to your point, they are not very trustworthy of a lot of the systems that have been meant to help them. And from your time in law enforcement, I mean, a lot of these organizations and institution and government entities are doing their best, but a lot of times because of politics or just different, civil differences, these kids are being put more at risk than they're actually being helped. So I think that, as far as the Brave resources and tools, the next step, programs like the Brave Leadership Academy, Brave Scholars, things that are going to teach them about opportunities in terms of higher education and character building and leadership skills, that's where they're really finding community. And they're finding a connection with other young women who have the desire to reach those goals and that believe that they're not unattainable. They really believe that through, just connection with each other and with willing adults who are ready to help them, that they can really go to that next level in their life and make a difference.
Right. So is there actual places that that they actually live together or they spend time together? Because a lot of times these girls come from homes where their parents were actually involved in them being part of like the trafficking world. And I think these are some of the conversations that people, they shy away from because they can't believe, that parents would put their own children in danger. A lot of times we have this conception that they're strangers from another country or it happens somewhere else, but that it doesn't happen in, nice neighborhoods. So how is it that, what is their day-to-day life as far as, because a lot of times they can't go back to their family.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. The misconception that exploitation and these really dire circumstances happens in, just other countries, maybe developing countries. That's totally not true. It is a misconception. There is trafficking and exploitation and all kinds of issues just right in our backyards, right under our nose. And the vulnerable youth, especially from the foster care system, are susceptible to trafficking, homelessness, and a myriad of other things once they age out of the system. To your point, like if they're aging out of the system and they're an 18-year-old and they're not getting any services anymore from the foster care system, they're in a really, really vulnerable spot. And they're so much more likely to go through some of these very difficult circumstances. Brave is more of a preventative measure. A lot of the programs that we have are trying to meet these youth before they get to that age. So even starting with our curriculum, our small groups, the Brave Circles, the Leadership Academy, all of those things at an age where they're not aged out of a system yet, especially with the curriculum, that's geared toward even kids as young as 11, 12, 13. So really reaching them as a preventative measure is Brave's mission. There are a lot of other organizations that provide housing and do things that are really in a physical space with them. Right now, Brave is doing all of our programs virtually. However, I will say that our goal is to equip communities, what we call Brave chapters, all over the globe to reach the kids in their community. So we have right now just under 20 chapters here in the U.S. We have several popping up in Canada. We have chapters in other countries, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Africa is starting a Brave Leadership Academy soon. So the idea is that Brave coaches these communities, and it could be a church, it could be a school, it could be another nonprofit that wants to be a Brave community. We give them the resources and they reach the kids in their communities. So it's kind of like an empowerment for those groups and then a release for them to act on behalf of Brave in their local area.
Right. And what's so great about it being in their local area is that's, where they're going to live, right? And this is where they're going to interact, and getting more people involved with it. And, I love the preventative aspects of it because, this gives people a safe space, right? To learn things that, they maybe didn't learn growing up. And one of the things I've heard from, quite a few survivors is, they were trafficked at a very young age, and they were basically told this is normal, like this is the way it is. So when they're taught things that are not congruent with what keeps them safe and what things are, to then be able to teach them, hey, you're valuable, like no matter what happened, you get to step up and be the person you're here to be, and to be able to have those kind of things is such an important, offering to these girls. So I so appreciate what you're up to.
Thank you. Thank you. We believe that the preventative measures are just critical to reaching these girls before they get into situations and really get, fooled and duped by people that want to do them harm.
Right. I love it. So I'm curious, how old's your son?
My son is 13.
So what do you share with him, as a boy in the world? I'm sure he knows about what you're up to in Brave Global. What I'm curious from a teenager's perspective, what do you share with him? Because I know a lot of parents are like, God, do I share too much? I want them to be safe in the world, but I want them to know what's going on, but I also don't want to scare them. What are some of the things that you share with your son, and what kind of perspective do you think he's developed because of that?
Yeah, that is a great question, because it's like top of mind all the time right now because he is the age that he is. I shied away for a long time because of what you said. You don't want to scare them. You don't even sometimes want your kids to know that there is so much bad in the world. But when it comes to the treatment of women, and as he's starting now to like girls, of course, and become more interested in them, it's really been important for me to talk to him about respecting women, respecting girls, talking to them in a kind way. I've gone so far as to talk to him about, how there are men out there who want to exploit and objectify women, what that means. We've talked about pornography and how that is really a gateway for many men to see women as an object. And so we have to really be careful of what we're looking at and what we're paying attention to. We have the respecting women conversation a lot in my house.
I love that. It's interesting when we look at the just kind of the world as a whole, and in terms of music, a lot of times, we'll like the beat of a music, but if you listen to some of the words, there's been a lot of glamorization of like the whole pimps and hoes and, respectfulness and all of those type of things. And so, it's an interesting time to be able to have conversations with kids, in my case, grandkids. My grandson's, 15, where you're saying, hey, don't let the words just roll past you, like, actually have some intention and how they impact, like how you treat people and what you say to them and what they look like. So I think a lot of these, there's a lot of practicality, of having these kind of conversations that may not be that comfortable, but they have huge ripple effects on and how things affect in the world.
They do. They have huge ripple effects, and it's happening earlier and earlier, unfortunately. Our kids are being exposed to things really early at a young age. I mean, we're talking, before they even hit double-digit ages. And so that's really disheartening to me, and we do, if anybody listening is on Instagram, on our profile, there's a link to an internet safety toolkit that one of our partners put out. People are reaching these kids in ways that were, that were unheard of when you and I were growing up, Diane. I mean, through the internet, through video games, and through social media. I mean, it is just a real breeding ground for exploitation and trafficking, unfortunately. So if you do have kids that are growing up and they're 8, 9, 10, 11, it is really time for you to start talking to them about these dangers.
Right. Well, and to your point, it's so important, especially since, people got introduced on a much bigger level, the Zoom world, right? Where it's like they're online more than ever. And so some of the ways in which predators were, getting connected with the kids were very different. But, if you think, oh, my kids are just playing a video game and not realizing that there's chats in those places. And it is a place where they don't show up as an elderly, man showing up. They pretend that they're kids, right? To get their trust and, try and find out more information about them. So having conversations with your kids about, what you are actually telling people online and who you think they might be may not be the same. So these are much deeper conversations to be able to have. Is what may have seemed simple on the surface are actually ways that people are getting to your kids to exploit them. And a lot of times having, wedges between parents, right? If they have, right. Of course, any teenager is going to have something that's coming up like, oh, my life's so terrible, I have to make my bed, that, right. They start going, oh, well, you don't have to live there. You can come meet me and come do something. And so there's all these escalation of things that can happen with that. And again, not to make the kids afraid or paranoid, but to have awareness about, hey, not everyone has your best interest. And when you're online, it's almost as if you have to look at it as if you're meeting a stranger on the street and act accordingly in that way. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's just the danger is at a new level, and anybody who's going to be grooming somebody who they're about to exploit is always going to be offering them a better life, quote unquote, or a better way. That's where you see a lot of women even having what they call survivor sex. They're doing it because it's paying their bills, or somebody's buying them a car, providing them a place to live, and so it's just that better life, quote unquote, is something that is dangled in front of these youth and these adults even as a better way, and it really is just it's set out to do them very much harm.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and especially, for the younger girls, if they're pretending to be like a boyfriend, right? And they're saying all the things that are feeding into their self-esteem, and, they go, I'm here for you and you're beautiful and all of these things that are great to hear, but you don't necessarily know what's going on down the road. And the other thing too is with the selfies, right? It's like, oh, just show me a picture of you with your shirt off, or, right. These kind of things. And what people don't realize, what may seem innocent at the time, show me yours, I'll show you mine kind of thing, they're actually being used as blackmail and saying, okay, I'm going to show this to all your friends in the whole school unless you do this and this, right? So you have to be really thinking ahead of, what are the situations, and having these conversations with your kids to be able to talk about them. In fact, I just recently had this conversation with my daughter because, my granddaughter is 13, and, there's that stage where you want to be liked, and you have to have these kind of conversations where your kids, when they're feeling like they're in trouble, that they will talk to you no matter what, because a lot of times kids don't tell their parents because they think they're going to get in trouble or they won't understand. So it's important to have code words in families too. Like, hey, if your kid says this, regardless of what's going on, you need to step up and be a protector at that point and not worry about being in trouble. So there's much deeper conversations that families can have with their kids to help them to be able to realize what are some of the things that are happening in their world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Communication is key.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what about like fear? Like, one of the things that we talk about is people are trying to make the correct choices in their life or better choices for themselves. There can be a fear of things that maybe didn't work out before. What are some of the things that you do to kind of combat fear? You talk about having like room for your faith to mobilize. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how faith comes into the picture.
Yeah, well, I think that the work that I do day in and day out is can be really disheartening, and it can be just full of a lot of not your normal disappointment, like maybe that people experience at a 9-to-5 job where they're not dealing with things that are so emotionally charged. Like sometimes there are people like me who are doing work that is not maybe physically taxing, but emotionally and mentally very taxing, because you're dealing with people and mentoring people and teaching people and putting together programs for people who are really fighting for their lives in some ways. And so that can play a big role in just determining my day-to-day psyche, like how I'm feeling, just about the world, about the work that I do and what's next. Fear often creeps in because, this problem of exploitation and trafficking and dealing with vulnerable youth, it seems like such a huge mountain, right? I mean, the problem of it all, it just seems like insurmountable. And, it can be really defeating. And I think that I'm not alone when I say that it sometimes is like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do. There's no way that we can solve these problems. But I always have to remind myself that one of us can't do everything, but each one of us can do something. So every day, if I can, mobilize my faith and remember that there is something greater out there that's fighting on behalf of all of us, not just me, not just these kids, not just these women, it really can eradicate the fear. And fear is just a lie. It's the thief of joy. It's the thief of so many different things. And so day to day, I really do have to exercise my faith muscle so that I don't get into a pit of despair over the problems that we're dealing with.
Right, right. Well, I love the acronyms around fear about, false reality appearing, real. And
Yes.
It's just being able to look at like, it's not true, right? It's what we make of it. And, you can look at the flip side of it is face everything and rise, right? So there's different ways to be able to look at fear and how we incorporate it in our life. And I love that you mentioned the part of like, this can be, emotionally and spiritually exhausting work, and to be able to fill yourself up and to be able to step away from some of it as well and be able to do some things so that you come back with fresh eyes and to be able to look at it from different perspectives. And one of the things I love to ask my guests is I think that how we live our life is different in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our office, and how we create our environment matters. So what is your favorite room in your home and why?
Oh, that is a great question. I think it is my back patio. So it's not a real room, but it is a space that we just moved into a new house, and I got, I spent the money on the furniture. I have plants out there, which is very important to me. At nighttime, I'll light candles, and sometimes in the daytime, I'll take my laptop out there and work outside if the weather is cooperating. And that is, to me, being outdoors is my favorite. So the fact that I have a little room, quote unquote, out there that's comfortable and allows me to, literally get some fresh air and mentally just take a break from being indoors in the office, that's like gold to me. So I do love my back patio.
I love that. I think it's just so important. I love sharing that with the listeners, because I think no matter where you live, big, small, whatever the space is, to create your own sanctuaries. What are the places that inspire you, that fill you back up so that you can go out and do your bigger missions in the world and do those things, and creating those, not only safe spaces, but beautiful spaces, right? The things that mean something and inspire us make such a huge difference in who we are in the world. So, Miley, I know people are going to want to stay in contact with you and also the resources of Brave Global. How can they go about doing that?
Yeah, you can find us online at braveglobal.org, and we are on Instagram and Facebook at Brave Global Inc. INC, and we have a podcast. It's called the Brave Girls Podcast. You can find them on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts. We also have curriculum on our website for anybody who's leading youth right now. And we just published a book of survivor stories. It's available on Amazon or anywhere that you buy books. And the title of that is Brave in Real Life. So a lot of stuff out there for anybody. We hope that you hop on social media or email us through our website. We'd love to be in touch with you. If you want to start a Brave community in your local area, we can coach you and be happy to do that as well.
Love it. Oh, it's so good. And, as you know, our theme for this year are people that are fighting for freedom. So I'd love to know, how are you fighting for freedom in the world today?
I pray a lot. That might sound cliche, but that is like my ultimate armor right now, is just prayer for myself and prayer for everybody out there.
Oh, that is perfect, and a perfect ending. So thank you so much for your wisdom and for all you're doing in the world.
Thank you, Diane.
All right, listeners, thank you so much for being here with us. And until we connect again, live your spa life and stand in your freedom. Bye for now. Bye-bye.